Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to get into something that affects all of us, no matter what you do for a living.
It's where psychology meets work.
Yeah, so basically how understanding people, human behavior, can really make or break how good you are at your job.
We're going pretty deep on this one. You've given me a ton of research to go through, the Handbook of Psychology, even some real-world company examples, which are always really interesting.
Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to give you guys listening those aha moments, like the stuff that actually helps you at work, whether you're managing a team, figuring out your career, or just trying to figure out why your coworkers do the things that they do.
This is the stuff they don't teach you in school, but it has a huge impact on, well, your work life, no matter what you do.
Exactly. So first up, how do we even define what jobs are? For a long time, it was all about the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, the DOT.
The DOT, though, it kind of had its issues, its limitations. Could you imagine trying to find a job description for, like, an influencer in the DOT?
Yeah, no.
It was way too focused on really specific jobs, like really specific to back then. Plus, it was tough to, like, compare different jobs, and keeping it updated was a nightmare.
It's like trying to use a rotary phone to, like, manage all your social media. It's completely outdated.
Exactly. So then comes OneIt. That's the Occupational Information Network.
Ooh, fancy.
It's like, imagine the DOT, but evolved for the internet. Instead of just listing tasks, it gives you, like, this whole framework to describe pretty much any job across industries and in way more detail, plus it's always being updated.
So, like, when my job title inevitably changes to Chief Cat Video Curator, ONET will know what I mean.
You got it. But even with ONET, there's debate. Some people are saying, hold on, just listing skills and knowledge, is that really enough? Some say we need to factor in a personality, values, maybe even attitudes. That's where you get competency modeling.
So it's less about what you do, more about, like, how you do it. Like, are you super organized, or are you more fly by the seat of your pants?
Exactly, and how those traits fit different roles. Now, there's some overlap there with the traditional job analysis, so the jury's still out on the best way to go about all this.
Now, this is where I think a lot of us trip up, and this is job performance. You always hear people talking about it, but what does it actually even mean?
It's more than just clocking in and clocking out, right? Job performance, if you boil it down, it's about behavior, but the kind that helps your organization, actually do well and succeed. Think about it this way. You've got a software developer.
Okay, got it. Picturing someone coding away.
So their task performance is all about writing good, clean code, meeting deadlines, all that core stuff. But then you've also got this thing called contextual performance. That's things like helping a teammate figure out a bug, or maybe suggesting a process improvement, stuff that helps the entire team function better.
So it's not just about your own individual output. It's about how you're contributing to the whole environment.
Yeah.
That reminds me, I read something interesting about how supervisor training can actually have a ripple effect on, believe it or not, recruiting.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If you train supervisors well in, the ins and outs of hiring, it changes how recruiters act, even how candidates perceive the company.
So investing in training your supervisors not only helps get better performance out of your existing employees, but it can actually help you attract better talent, too.
Yeah.
That's a double win.
Exactly. It also goes to show that we can't just look at individual people. The whole organization matters. How a company approaches staffing, their leadership style, even just the physical work environment. It all ties back to how well people perform.
Okay, folks, get ready, because now we're stepping into brain power territory intelligence. How much does it actually matter at work? How smart you are?
Yeah, the age-old debate. So there's this thing called G, that's general cognitive ability, and people often see that as a sign of how well you'll do at a job. But, defining G itself is a bit tricky. Some folks see it as this one big brain power factor, while others like to break it down into categories like verbal skills, how good you are with numbers, that kind of thing.
So is it like a mental Swiss Army knife? More tools equal more intelligence.
That's one way to think about it. Then you've got fluid intelligence versus crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence, that's how good you are at solving new problems, thinking on your feet. Crystallized intelligence is more about the knowledge that you've built up over time.
Okay, I'm with you. So fluid is like your processing speed, and crystallized is like the hard drive where you store all the data.
Perfect analogy. And the interesting thing is, crystallized intelligence, it actually builds up using your fluid intelligence. You take what you can process quickly, and with effort, it gets stored as knowledge.
So I could cram for a test, And that information would become crystallized intelligence.
Yes, but it would build on your fluid intelligence, your ability to learn and understand the material in the first place.
Interesting. But does that mean if you have a high G, you're guaranteed to be CEO someday? What about specific skills and talents?
That is the question, isn't it? Some people say G is the end-all be-all, while others think specific abilities matter more for certain jobs. The research is still ongoing, but what's clear is that intelligence, in all its forms, definitely has an impact on how we work.
And while we're on the topic of how people are different, what about personality? Does it really make a difference if you're introverted or extroverted, or whether you're a planner or more spontaneous?
Absolutely. Actually, the big five personality traits are a huge area of research in work psychology. That's openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Okay, so it's a lot more nuanced than those silly online quizzes like, what kind of bread are you?
Oh, yeah, much more. And these traits, there's a ton of research on them. Consistently, conscientiousness that's being organized, dependable, driven by goals, that's a really good predictor of good job performance across a wide range of jobs.
That makes sense. Those are the people you can always count on. What about the other traits? Do they matter at all?
Emotional stability, which is kind of the opposite of neuroticism, it's also linked to, overall good performance, though maybe not as strongly to, like, really specific tasks. Being able to handle stress, that's good, but it's not everything.
So having a level head definitely helps, but it's not like having a stress-proof force field around you is going to get you that promotion. What I find really interesting is how these traits actually play out in our behavior at work, like what we actually do.
Right. They're not just some abstract ideas floating around. There are tests out there, like the Personnel Decisions International Employment Inventory, which measures things like responsibility, dependability, basically how conscientiousness shows up in your actions.
And they've actually linked scores on this test to real-world behaviors, not just how someone answers a questionnaire, but what they actually do on the job.
Exactly. Stuff like following safety rules, taking initiative, staying focused on a task, all those little things. It's almost like you can see that personality trait being translated into workplace actions.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already. We talked about how to even define what jobs are, what constitutes good performance, the role of intelligence, and even personality. I think it's time for a coffee break.
I could go for one. But we're just getting started. Next up, we're diving into the force that drives us all, and that is motivation.
Ah, yes, that elusive energy that gets us out of bed and into the office every morning, or, logged into our home office.
There are so many theories on workplace motivation, the job characteristics model, goal-setting theory, self-efficacy theory. We could spend hours just talking about each one.
Let's save those for another deep dive. But what are some key takeaways about motivation at work? What actually matters?
One big one is job design. How a job is structured, the actual tasks, how much autonomy you have, whether there are opportunities for growth, all that can make or break someone's motivation and how satisfied they are. Just think about it. Would you be excited to do the same, boring task over and over again with no say in how you do it, day after day?
My soul would slowly wither away.
Exactly. Then there's this idea of core self-evaluations. That includes stuff like self-esteem, self-efficacy, which is how much you believe in your ability to actually get stuff done, even your locus of control, meaning whether you feel like you're in charge of your own life.
So it's like a personal scorecard of how we see ourselves and what we think we're capable of.
That's a great way to put it. And research has shown a strong link between these self-evaluations and how satisfied people are at work. If you believe in yourself and feel like you're in control, you're much more likely to actually enjoy your job.
So having a healthy dose of confidence and a positive outlook can actually make a real difference.
Seems like it. And it just emphasizes that people are different. What motivates one person might not work for another. So understanding those individual differences is really key.
All right, let's move on to a topic that everyone has an opinion on. Leadership. What does science tell us about what makes a good leader? Not just, who can shout the loudest.
Leadership is a huge area of research, and it's always evolving. We used to focus a lot on trying to pin down specific leadership traits, what qualities make a great leader. But these days, the focus is more on leadership styles and behaviors, what leaders actually do.
So are great leaders born or made?
Well, it's probably a bit of both. But what's become pretty clear is that there's no single best leadership style. The one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work. The best leaders are the ones who can adapt to the situation.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want, like, a drill sergeant leading a brainstorming session.
No, you wouldn't. There are theories like Fiedler's contingency model and House and Mitchell's path goal theory that emphasize just how important context is when it comes to being an effective leader.
So a good leader is kind of like a chameleon, changing their approach based on what's needed in the moment.
I like that. And of course, we can't talk about leadership without mentioning the impact of technology. With the rise of remote work and global teams, we're seeing a lot more of this e-leadership thing.
Yeah, leading through screens, trying to build trust virtually.
Yeah.
That comes with a whole new set of challenges.
Right. How do you create that sense of connection and community when everyone is scattered all over the place? The research is still catching up, but we are getting some interesting insights. For example, studies on what are called group support systems, GSSs for short, have shown that sometimes tech can actually take on some of the traditional roles of a leader.
So in the future, my boss might be an AI. Just kidding, mostly. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's super relevant to all of us, organizational change and development. How do we deal with the fact that the world of work is constantly changing?
Change is the one constant, right? Being able to manage it effectively is essential for any organization that wants not just to survive, but to thrive.
So where do we even begin? How do we make sense of this ever-shifting landscape?
There are a few different angles we can look at this from. Cognitive framing theories focus on how leaders and employees perceive change. Do they see it as a threat or as an opportunity? Then there are theories of change momentum, which explore the forces that drive change forward or sometimes even hold it back.
So it's this constant push and pull between wanting to move forward and clinging to the familiar, kind of like a workplace tug of war.
Exactly. And one of the biggest challenges we face is putting all this research into practice. How do we take these theories out of the textbooks and apply them to real companies with real people?
Yeah, we need to build a bridge between those who study this stuff and those of us who are out there in the trenches actually dealing with the day-to-day chaos of change.
Absolutely. More collaboration between researchers and practitioners is essential if we want to figure out what actually works when it comes to managing change effectively.
Okay, let's talk about something else that's become pretty much ubiquitous in the world of work. Teams. Are they really the magical solution to all our productivity problems?
Teams are definitely everywhere these days, and for good reason. When they work well, they can achieve amazing things. But managing them effectively? Well, that's not easy.
So what's the secret sauce? How do we build high-performing teams instead of just having groups of people who are, struggling to work together?
There's no single answer, but there are some key ingredients. One of the big ones is collective efficacy. That's basically the team's shared belief that they can achieve their goals. Research shows a strong connection between this belief and actual team performance.
So it's kind of like team spirit, but on a deeper, more impactful level.
Exactly. When everyone believes in themselves and each other, they're more likely to aim higher, to stick with it when things get tough, and ultimately to succeed.
But you can't just force that belief on people, right? It has to come from somewhere.
Exactly. It's about fostering the right conditions. And that's where ongoing research is so important. We know it matters, but the best ways to cultivate it are still being explored.
Another crucial factor is task interdependence. That's how much team members rely on each other to get things done.
Right. Are people working independently toward a shared goal? Or are the tasks done in a specific sequence, requiring constant back and forth interaction? The answer to that question has implications for how the team is structured, how they communicate, and ultimately how well they perform.
So it's a spectrum, from everyone doing their own thing to being completely reliant on each other.
Exactly. Understanding where your team falls on that spectrum can help you structure the work in a way that actually plays to your strengths.
We've thrown a lot at our listeners today. What about training? How can we make sure these teams have the skills they need to actually succeed?
Team training is key, but it's not as simple as just handing someone a manual and saying, good luck. We have to think about what content should be included, whether we should focus on general teamwork skills or tailor the training to the team's specific tasks. And then there's the question of timing. When is the best time to train? Upfront. Ongoing.
So many questions. Sounds like team training is practically a whole field unto itself.
It is. And with technology constantly evolving, we have new tools all the time. Web-based training, simulations, even virtual reality is starting to play a role. The future of team training is looking pretty high-tech and exciting.
Okay, let's switch gears one more time and talk about something that's essential for any business. Customer service. What's the psychology behind those interactions that make us, as customers, feel valued, appreciated, and ultimately happy to spend our hard-earned money?
It all comes down to customer service behaviors, which are often shortened to CSBs. Basically, those are the specific actions and attitudes that employees display when they're interacting with customers.
So things like being friendly, helpful, resolving issues quickly.
hmm
The basics, right?
Those are definitely important, but there's more to it than that. There are behaviors that are, let's say, expected, part of the job description, and then there's going above and beyond. Saying thank you is great, but going out of your way to solve a tricky problem or do something unexpected to surprise a customer, that's what creates those wow moments.
Right. It's that extra effort that turns a satisfied customer into a loyal one. And of course, context matters too. Dealing with a frustrated customer on the phone is very different from helping someone in a store.
Absolutely. And research has actually shown that certain personality traits are really good predictors of how successful someone will be in a customer service role. Some people are just naturally gifted at it.
I guess that explains why some folks can calm down an angry customer like they're whispering to a baby unicorn. It's a gift.
There's definitely evidence to support that. People who score high in agreeableness, for example, are often more patient and helpful by nature, which are fantastic traits for anyone in a customer-facing role.
But what about those of us who weren't born with the customer whisperer gene? Can those skills be learned?
Absolutely. A lot of it comes down to creating a supportive climate for service. That means fostering an organizational culture that genuinely values customer satisfaction, empowers employees to actually go the extra mile, and provides them with the training and resources they need to be successful.
So it's not about expecting employees to work miracles, but about setting them up for success.
Exactly. When employees feel valued and appreciated, and when they have the tools and support they need, they're much more likely to create those exceptional customer experiences that build loyalty and drive business success.
That makes sense. It's about empowering employees, not just demanding results. Okay, let's talk about a challenge that keeps many leaders up at night. Employee retention.
It's a big one, especially in today's competitive job market. Holding on to your top talent is absolutely crucial, and it goes beyond just offering a good salary.
So how do you keep employees happy and engaged enough to actually stay?
There are two main approaches. One is what we call market-based strategies. That's about staying competitive with pay, benefits, perks, all those things that make people feel financially valued.
It's about keeping up with the Joneses of the corporate world.
Exactly. But then you've got supportive practices. That's about creating an environment where people feel respected, valued, and well supported on a human level. Think open communication, opportunities for growth and development, recognition for good work. It's about the whole experience, not just the paycheck.
So one is about external rewards, the other is about that internal feeling of being appreciated and valued.
Right. And a company that's really nailed this is SAS Institute. They have incredibly low turnover, and they've achieved that by using both approaches. They offer competitive pay and benefits, but they also have things like on-site childcare, fitness centers, even generous work-life balance policies.
Wow, they're going all out. I bet it pays off, though.
Big time. That low turnover saves them millions of dollars in recruiting and training costs, and they have tons of people applying for every open position. They've created a place where people actually want to work, and it shows.
That's the dream, right? Build a great workplace and the talent comes to you.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about work design. How much does the structure of a job itself affect the employee's experience?
The way work is designed can have a huge impact not just on how well someone performs, but also on their overall well-being and how satisfied they are. It's about more than just assigning tasks and deadlines.
Okay, so what are our options here? How many ways are there to design a job?
There are a few main approaches. There's the motivational approach, which focuses on building in elements that increase meaningfulness, autonomy, and feedback. Then there's the perceptual motor approach, which is more about making jobs less mentally demanding. You also have the mechanistic approach, which is all about efficiency and standardization. And finally, the biological approach, which focuses on ergonomics and reducing physical strain.
Whoa, my head's spinning. So which one's the best?
Well, it depends on the specific job and the person doing it. But research shows that people tend to prefer jobs designed with the motivational approach in mind. They want work that feels meaningful, gives them some level of control, and allows them to learn and grow.
So challenge people, engage them, let them make decisions. That sounds like a pretty good recipe for happy employees.
It really does. And this ties back to what we were talking about earlier with motivation. When jobs are designed in this way, it can tap into people's intrinsic drive, leading to both better performance and higher job satisfaction.
And speaking of well-being, let's talk about something that's a major issue in today's workplace: stress.
Ugh, stress. It's a silent killer of productivity and morale. Chronic stress takes a toll on employee health, and ultimately, it hurts the organization's bottom line.
So what's the solution? Is it all about meditation apps and yoga classes? Or is there a more scientific approach to managing stress at work?
Those can be helpful tools, but we need to dig a little deeper. One model that's been very influential is the demand control support model. Basically, it says that stress comes from a sense of imbalance. You've got high demands placed on you, but very little control over how you do your work, and very little support from those around you.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for a meltdown. If you're constantly being told what to do, have no say in how you do it, and feel like you're all alone, oof.
Exactly. So it's about addressing stress holistically, not just giving people coping mechanisms. It's about actually designing work environments that minimize the stressors and maximize support.
So a supportive manager, some autonomy in how you do your work, and a team that's got your back can go a long way.
Absolutely. And there are lots of different interventions that organizations can implement at various levels: reducing workload, increasing autonomy, providing social support, training people in stress management techniques. It's about a multi-pronged approach.
Makes sense. It's about tackling stress from multiple angles, not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. Okay, let's move on to another crucial aspect of work: decision-making. How do we make good choices, especially when the pressure is on?
There are tons of theories out there, but one classic framework is subjective expected utility theory, SEUT for short.
Subjective.expected.utility. My brain needs a translator.
Fair enough. In a nutshell, it says that we make decisions by weighing the potential outcomes of each choice and then picking the one we think will bring us the most satisfaction or utility.
So it's like our brains are doing these tiny little calculations, adding up the pros and cons of each option.
Exactly. But the thing is, SUT has a flaw. It assumes that we're perfectly rational and have access to all the information. In reality, our emotions, our biases, and good old-fashioned human error, they all play a role.
Right, we're not robots. We're messy and complicated, and we don't always make perfectly rational decisions. What about those times when we make a bad call and then just keep digging ourselves deeper? We've all been there.
That's a phenomenon called escalation of commitment. That's when we cling to a failing course of action, even when it's clear that we should probably cut our losses.
It's like that feeling of, I've invested so much already, I can't give up now, even when it's probably the smartest thing to do.
Exactly. Understanding these psychological traps can help us become more aware of our own biases and hopefully make better decisions, especially when the stakes are high.
So self-awareness is key. Got it. Okay, let's talk about careers. The whole idea of climbing the corporate ladder just seems so outdated these days. How do we navigate our careers in this crazy, ever-changing world of work?
You're right. The traditional career path is becoming less and less common. You've got the gig economy, remote work, constant technological advancements. It's led to this new concept of the boundaryless career.
So less about climbing a preset ladder, more about creating your own path.
Exactly. The boundaryless career is all about fluidity, flexibility, and being open to new opportunities, even if they fall outside traditional company structures or job titles.
So it's less about job security and more about constantly building your skills so you're ready for anything.
That's a great way to put it. And it begs the question, how do we measure success in this new world of work? Is it still all about promotions and raises?
I have a feeling it's more than that.
It definitely is. Career success has both objective measures, those are things like salary, titles, number of promotions, but then you've also got the subjective side of things.
So like personal fulfillment, work-life balance, feeling like you're actually contributing to something meaningful.
All of that. And research shows that career success, however you define it, is influenced by factors like your motivation, your personality, even your family dynamics.
So it's a pretty complex recipe with a lot of ingredients.
It definitely is. For example, people who score high in conscientiousness, the trait we were talking about earlier, they tend to do better in their careers, both objectively and subjectively. They're organized, goal-oriented, persistent, all those things that help you achieve your aspirations.
So the old adage, hard work pays off, it still holds true, even in this new world of work.
It's definitely a factor, but you also need to be proactive to build valuable skills, to seek out new opportunities. It's a mix of effort, strategy, and yeah, sometimes a little bit of luck.
Okay, let's talk about a field that's all about optimizing how we interact with technology. Human factors and ergonomics. What is that exactly?
Human factors and ergonomics, often shortened to HFE, it's all about designing things that could be systems, products, even entire work environments, with the goal of making them safe, efficient, and user-friendly. It's about making sure technology actually works for us, not the other way around.
So when my computer crashes for the 10th time today, is that a failure of human factors?
Well, maybe. HFE professionals, they use psychology, engineering, and design principles to understand how we interact with machines and technology, and then they use that knowledge to improve things.
So it's like a blend of science and art.
Exactly. And it's used in so many different areas. Designing airplane cockpits to minimize pilot error, making car dashboards intuitive so you can actually find the controls, creating medical devices that are safe for both patients and healthcare providers.
Wow, so HFE is quietly making our lives better behind the scenes. I never would have thought of it that way.
They play a huge role in ensuring that technology is both usable and beneficial rather than frustrating and potentially even dangerous.
Okay, last but not least, organizational culture and climate. Those terms get thrown around a lot, but what do they actually mean?
They're related, but definitely distinct concepts. Culture is the deeper level, those shared values, beliefs, assumptions that really shape how an organization functions. It's like the unwritten rule book.
So it's like the DNA of a company.
Perfect analogy. Climate, on the other hand, that's the shared perception of the work environment. It's how employees actually experience that culture day to day.
So culture is the blueprint, and climate is what it feels like to actually live in the house that was built from those blueprints.
I love that. And climate can vary, even within the same company. You could have a company that's known for its innovative culture, but one team might have a super competitive, cutthroat climate, while another is more collaborative and supportive.
So it's important to understand both the culture and the climate because they both affect how people behave and ultimately how well the organization as a whole functions.
Absolutely. There's this really interesting model that explains how all this emerges. It starts with the individuals, their backgrounds, their experiences during the hiring process, the leadership style of the organization. All these things contribute to shaping the overall culture. Then, through social interactions and shared experiences, a common climate starts to emerge.
So it's like we collectively figure out what's normal here and how we're supposed to act based on all these cues.
Right. And that shared climate, it's powerful. It can either create a sense of belonging, support, and high performance, or it can become toxic, leading to negativity, conflict, and dysfunction.
So leaders really need to be aware of the kind of climate they're creating, whether intentionally or not.
It's crucial. A positive organizational climate is essential for attracting and keeping good people, for encouraging innovation, for achieving goals. It's not just a nice to have, it's a must have.
Wow, we covered a lot of ground in this first part. From the nitty-gritty details of defining jobs to the big picture of leadership and organizational culture, it's been a whirlwind of information.
And we're just getting started. We've only scratched the surface of how psychology impacts the world of work.
But before we dive into part 2, let's leave our listeners with something to ponder. With technology changing so rapidly and work evolving in ways we can't even predict, what skills do you think are going to be most important for thriving in the future? We'll be back soon to continue our exploration.
Welcome back to our deep dive where psychology meets the workplace. Last time we left off with a pretty big question. How do we actually prepare ourselves for the future of work, especially with all this rapid change happening?
It's a question that I think is on everyone's mind these days, right? With tech changing so fast, how do we make sure our careers don't become, obsolete?
Well, we can't predict the future, but the research does give us some hints. One thing that comes up over and over again is this idea of adaptability.
Okay, so being able to roll with the punches, learn new things quickly, not totally freak out when the plan changes.
You got it. The ability to learn, unlearn, and then relearn, that's going to be essential. It's like mental gymnastics for your brain, constantly stretching and adapting to new situations.
I like that, mental gymnastics. So what else should we be training our brains for?
Another big one is problem-solving skills. These days, it's not enough to just know the right answers. You need to be able to analyze situations, think critically, come up with creative solutions, especially when the old ways of doing things just don't work anymore.
So we need to become expert puzzle solvers, figuring out how to fit the pieces together, even when the picture keeps changing.
Exactly. The world is becoming more and more complex, more ambiguous, and in that kind of environment, strong problem-solving skills are going to be incredibly valuable. And here's something that might surprise you. Social skills. They're becoming even more important, not less.
Wait, really? I thought in a world dominated by tech, we'd all just be interacting with robots and algorithms all day.
Tech is a tool. It's the humans behind it that make it all work. Things like emotional intelligence, empathy, the ability to build relationships with real people and navigate different perspectives, all of that is essential for success no matter what field you're in.
So it's not enough to just be a tech whiz. You also need to be a people person.
It's about being a well-rounded human being, someone who can understand and connect with other people. And all of that really starts with a commitment to continuous learning.
So it's not enough to get that degree and then just coast on that knowledge for the rest of your career.
Not anymore. In this fast-paced world, we need to embrace lifelong learning. That means actively seeking out new knowledge, new skills, new experiences even, or maybe especially outside our comfort zones.
That sounds like a lot of work. Is there any way to make this whole future-proofing thing feel a little less overwhelming?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
the most important thing we can take away from all this research is the power of self-awareness.
So understanding our strengths and weaknesses, what motivates us, how we interact with other people, basically knowing ourselves really well.
Exactly. When you understand yourself better, you can make better decisions about your career, your work style, even how you manage stress and deal with those inevitable changes that are always coming.
It's like having a user manual for your own brain.
That's a great way to put it. Another key takeaway is the importance of context. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to anything. All these principles and theories we've been talking about, they're powerful tools, but they need to be applied thoughtfully.
So what works at, say, Google might not work at a small family-run business.
Right. Every situation is different. And finally, let's not forget the power of continuous improvement. It's not just about learning new things, it's also about refining the skills you already have, improving processes, always looking for ways to do better.
So it's like adopting a growth mindset, always looking for ways to level up, to be the best version of yourself.
Exactly. By embracing that growth mindset and a commitment to constantly improving, we can not only survive these changes, but actually thrive in this new world of work.
This whole future of work conversation, it's definitely inspiring and maybe a little bit anxiety-provoking too. But you said something earlier that really stuck with me. The idea of finding joy and fulfillment in our work.
I think that's crucial. Work shouldn't just be about survival or climbing some imaginary ladder. It should also be about pursuing things that we're passionate about, using our talents, and making a contribution that actually feels meaningful.
I think it's easy to forget that in the day-to-day hustle, we get so caught up in just getting things done that we lose sight of why we're doing it in the first place.
And when we can find that sweet spot, that intersection of challenge and enjoyment, work becomes so much less of a chore and so much more of a source of purpose and satisfaction.
I love that the sweet spot of challenge and enjoyment. It makes work feel less like, well, work. But let's be real for a second. It's not all sunshine and roses, right? There are some real challenges, even controversies in this whole field of work psychology.
Of course. Like any field, there are areas where we don't have all the answers, where more research is needed. One persistent challenge is this issue of generalizability.
So just because a certain approach works in one company or situation doesn't mean it's going to work everywhere.
Exactly. A lot of the research is conducted in very specific contexts, so we have to be cautious about applying those findings too broadly. What works for a huge company like Google might not work for a tiny startup, and vice versa.
That makes sense. What about this whole issue of measurement? How do we accurately measure things like job performance, personality, or even something as intangible as organizational culture?
That's the million-dollar question. There are a lot of different tools and techniques out there, but they all have their limitations. And then there's always the risk of bias creeping in, whether we're aware of it or not.
All right, we're dealing with human beings here, not robots. People are complex, messy, they don't always fit neatly into categories.
That's what makes this field so fascinating and also so challenging. We're constantly refining our methods, trying to find better ways to understand and measure these really complex concepts.
So there's still a lot we're figuring out. But are there any, universal truths in all of this? Any principles that seem to hold true, regardless of culture or context?
That's a great question. While we can't be certain about anything, there are some fundamental human needs and motivations that do seem to transcend cultural boundaries. One that comes up again and again is the desire for belonging.
So feeling connected to others, being part of a group or community, is that just hardwired into our brains?
It really seems to be. That need for belonging, it's deeply rooted in who we are as humans, and it plays out just as strongly in our work lives as it does in our personal lives.
Humans are social creatures, after all. What else is on that list of universal truths?
Another big one is the desire for meaning and purpose. We all crave that feeling that our work matters, that we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not just about collecting a paycheck, it's about feeling like our efforts are making a difference in the world.
Exactly. And when people find that sense of purpose in their work, it becomes a really powerful motivator. They're more engaged, more productive, more fulfilled.
Okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here of belonging, meaning it's like we're laying the foundation for a truly human-centered workplace.
I like how you put that. And let's not forget about the importance of fairness and justice. People need to feel like they're being treated fairly, that the rules are applied consistently, and that their contributions are truly valued.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you feel like the system is rigged against you, why would you even care about the company's success?
Exactly. When people perceive fairness, it builds trust, loyalty, a sense of commitment. All of that is absolutely essential for a healthy and thriving work environment.
Wow, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I'm feeling super inspired to take some of these insights and apply them to my own work, and hopefully to help create a more positive and fulfilling experience for the people around me.
That's what it's all about. By understanding the psychology of work, we can unlock so much potential both for individuals and for organizations.
Before we wrap up part 2, let's leave our listeners with another question to ponder. Given all the complexities and challenges we've talked about, what are some concrete strategies for actually building a workplace culture that fosters well-being, motivation, and high performance? We'll explore that question in the final part of our deep dive. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into psychology at work. We left off with a big question. How do we actually build a workplace where people can thrive, feel motivated, and perform at their best?
It's the holy grail for so many organizations, and while there's no, magic formula, the research does give us some pretty good clues about what works.
Okay, so where do we even begin? What's step 1 on this journey to, workplace utopia?
Well, leadership definitely plays a huge role, but we're not talking about that old school command and control style of leadership.
Right, so less about barking orders and more about...
It's about creating a more collaborative, empowering kind of environment, one where there's a strong foundation of trust, psychological safety, mutual respect.
So people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing ideas, even taking risks, without worrying about being punished if they make a mistake.
Exactly. When people feel safe and supported, they're way more likely to be engaged, creative, and productive. They're not wasting energy on self-preservation or navigating office politics.
But leadership sets the tone, it's not the whole picture. What about the day-to-day interactions, the actual work environment itself?
That's where organizational culture and climate come into play. Remember, culture is like the DNA of the company, and climate is what it actually feels like to work there.
Right, it's like the difference between reading about a tropical island in a brochure and actually feeling the sun on your skin and the sand between your toes.
Perfect analogy. To build a truly thriving workplace, we have to cultivate a culture that reflects those universal truths we talked about earlier. Belonging, meaning, fairness.
So making people feel like they're part of a community, giving them opportunities to use their skills and make a real contribution, and ensuring that everyone feels valued and respected, man, that sounds like a pretty amazing place to work.
It does, doesn't it? But it takes more than just good intentions. We need to actually design policies, practices, systems that support those values. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Actions speak louder than words. People can spot a phony mission statement a mile away.
Totally. Authenticity is key. And that brings us to the design of the work itself. How do we create jobs that are both motivating and fulfilling?
Okay, I'm ready for a job makeover. Where do we start?
One of the most important elements is autonomy.
Giving people more control over their work, their schedules, how they approach their tasks. Less micromanaging, more trusting people to get the job done.
Exactly. When people have a sense of ownership and agency over their work, it does wonders for their motivation, their creativity, even their job satisfaction.
It's like the difference between being told to paint by numbers and being given a blank canvas, and the freedom to create your own masterpiece.
Another key ingredient is mastery.
So providing opportunities for people to learn, to grow, to develop their skills, and become experts in their field.
That's it. When people feel like they're making progress, like they're mastering new skills, it taps into their intrinsic motivation. They're not just going through the motions, they're actively engaged and invested in their work.
So it's about building a culture of continuous learning and development where people feel both challenged and supported to reach their full potential.
Absolutely. And the third piece of this puzzle is purpose.
That sense that our work actually matters, that we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. When people can connect their work to a larger purpose, it gives their efforts meaning, significance. It's no longer just a job, it's a calling.
Man, that's powerful stuff. But I have to ask, are there any companies actually getting this right? Or is this all just theoretical?
There are definitely organizations out there leading the charge. One that comes to mind is Patagonia.
The outdoor clothing company, what are they doing that's so special?
Patagonia has this deep commitment to environmental sustainability and social responsibility. And they've really woven those values into the fabric of their company culture.
So it's not just a marketing ploy. It's who they are at their core.
Exactly. And that sense of purpose, it shows up in everything they do, from their hiring practices to their product design to their employee benefits.
I bet their employees are pretty happy.
They have incredibly high levels of employee satisfaction and retention. People want to work there because they believe in what the company stands for.
Sounds like they've figured out a way to align business success with making a positive impact on the world.
It's proof that it can be done. And while no company is perfect, Patagonia's approach is definitely inspiring. It shows what's possible when we prioritize people, purpose, and the planet.
This whole deep dive has been quite a journey. We've covered everything from those tiny details of defining jobs to the big picture of leadership, culture, and the future of work. But if there's one overarching message I'm taking away from all of this, it's the importance of humanizing the workplace.
I love that. At the end of the day, it's about creating environments where people feel valued, respected, empowered to do their best work.
And where they can find joy, fulfillment, even a sense of purpose. Because when we create workplaces that meet those fundamental human needs, we unlock a whole new level of potential, both for individuals and for organizations as a whole.
Absolutely. It's a win-win for everyone.
A huge thank you to all of you listening for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even a little bit inspiring, and a special thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy digging into these topics and seeing how we can apply them to make work a better experience for everyone.
We've put together a list of resources in the show notes for those of you who want to explore these ideas even further. And remember, creating a more human-centered workplace starts with each of us. So take these insights, put them into practice, and let's all work together to make work a little bit brighter. One interaction, one decision, one job at a time. Until next time.